And so I have to refamiliarize myself with that all the time, So, I mean, it's an ongoing process. And the same thing for like, nobody expects you to memorize those numbers, or even, that white is 01 and yellow is 02 and orange is 03, and on and on. Nobody expects you to, I still look that up.
That's such a relief, because I'm like, oh, have I got a lot to memorize?
Yeah.
What you have to do is you just have to know where to find it, and you have, so you can, like, if somebody asks you, say a novice or somebody, you can just open the book and show them, hey, Ron, I'm glad you're on, because they had a question. I didn't know the exact requirements that let someone go from candidate to accredited, besides, having to be a member of DHS, grow and exhibit dahlias, how many shows and that kind of thing.
So Tony, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but it's right on the website. So yeah, just
Goldie,
Yeah.
I put the link in the chat for you. You will need to use your ADS login to view it.
Oh, okay.
But this will tell you exactly what you need to know to move from a candidate to an accredited.
I'd just say that it's a kind of a natural process. Once you're a candidate judge, you go through a learning process, and in a couple of years, maybe as many as 3 or 4, you transition to be an accredited judge. You have accumulated enough experience and these requirements to move on. You do need to pass a test, but it's not a big deal.
So it looks like 3 consecutive years, Goldie, and grown and exhibited dahlias in at least 6 shows. Go.
I have a question with that. Does that mean they have to be ADS shows? So like say a Geauga County Fair does not count towards that total?
It does count.
Yeah.
It does count? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you for asking those questions. It's what I was thinking too.
We're so happy you're excited about it.
Yeah.
Well,
That's right.
My thinking at the beginning is I just want to learn as much as I can. Doesn't mean I want to be a judge or anything like that, but I might as well head that way and see how it works out.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll work out. Guarantee it.
Well,
Yep.
I think I have very good mentors in this group.
I hope.
Well, we're going to try.
All right. So we're right at 7. I see there's still, she fell off. There was somebody trying to connect. And I think we have some new members joining us today. So I just want to welcome you and thanks for hopping on. Elizabeth has a little one that she's going to need to keep eyes on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today's topic, we're just going to talk about seed starting. And I'm sure many of you already start seeds, but for those who didn't, we thought it would be a good topic. And Elizabeth and I, while we do some things that are similar, we do a number of things that are completely different. And there's no one right way to starting seeds. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then Elizabeth can introduce herself. I'm Jess. So I've been part of the DSO now for 3 years. And outside of the DSO, I run a cut flower business that I started during COVID. So that's really when I started a cut flower garden. But I had been growing and starting seeds well before that. So Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I could hear my son screaming, so I was just checking that. Hey, I'm Elizabeth. I, just like Jess, do cut flowers. My business is Red House Florals. I've been growing plants from seed for 9 years, and this will be my 3rd season selling. And like Jess said, I do stuff a little differently, but we do also do a lot of stuff exactly the same.
And between the two of us, we try to split what we start. So we're both not starting like snapdragons or celosia, and then we kind of share what we start to kind of manage the inventory in the house, because it gets a little crazy here in the next month or so. So the agenda for today, we're going to cover these topics. Why grow your own, supplies to get you started. So we're going to go over all of the supplies that we use. And then at the end of the presentation, I've included links if you're interested in purchasing something similar. We'll talk about planting. We'll talk about troubleshooting, because inevitably you're going to run into issues starting seeds. And then last, we're going to touch on those resources. And if you guys aren't muted, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. Except for you, Elizabeth, I'll let you hang out. And that way, if your phone rings or the TV pops on, we won't hear it. All right. So first, we'll just kind of talk about why would you even want to grow your own seeds? And one of the things that I enjoy about growing seeds, you can start seeds for flowers, herbs, vegetables, even trees and shrubs. And a seed is a plant just waiting to happen. And all we need to do is create the proper environment for it to grow. And so as dahlia growers, many of you are growing dahlias from tubers, but you can also start them from seeds. So I know some of you are just starting to think about possibly hybridizing, and we have fantastic hybridizers that are part of the DSO. And this can kind of help set you up. So whether you buy dahlia seeds or maybe you're going to collect them this year to grow them next year. For Elizabeth and I, as cut flower growers, we start thousands, and I'm not kidding, it's crazy, thousands of seeds every year to ensure that we have flowers blooming throughout the growing season. So we'll purposely pick seeds that we know will bloom earlier, some that will bloom through the heat of the summer, and then some that'll bloom through fall. So we kind of have a continuous supply of seeds or flowers going. Oh. So the other thing, why grow your own? You can find varieties that you can't find locally. And you might be able to find maybe like some versions of celosia or snapdragons. But if you're into cut flowers, they're probably not the variety that you would want for cut flowers. So we specifically grow those varieties that have very long stems. You can buy things like asters, which I'm a huge fan of, stock, and hundreds of other types of seeds that you're not going to be able to find at Petites or Gales. You might be able to get more plants cheaper, but that might be a stretch if you're not growing a large number of plants. So an example for you is I'm growing close to 400 sweet peas this year. I just kind of line them. I have a chain link fence with one of my neighbors, and I just line them all the way down the fence. And for sweet peas, I can't really source those sweet peas locally. But for the amount of dirt and effort that I'm putting into my seeds anyways, that makes these more reasonable for me to grow myself. By starting seeds inside, it will let you kind of move plants outside and get them into the ground before you might otherwise be able to. So Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to kind of touch on it. She's ahead of me a bit, but an example are kind of cold hardy plants. So do you want to share like what kind of cold hardy plants you're already?
Sure. Here in Ohio, I just planted yesterday saponaria, which is a soapwort, like a baby's breath, Amy, which is Queen Anne's lace. So those are really cold hardy here, and you can plant them out without any cover right now in Ohio, and they would do fine. So there's a bunch of different ones It all depends on what you're looking for though. But the thing that's nice is if you plant stuff now, it'll bloom earlier than obviously your dahlias, which you're waiting a long time for.
Yeah, and the other thing that we both have started, and Elizabeth's ahead of me, and they're not quite seeds, but we start ranunculus and anemones, which are corms, and those we're both getting into the ground, hopefully this weekend for me, but Elizabeth already has hers in the ground. So you can picture me in my parka, trying to get stuff planted. Hopefully the dirt warms up a little bit. So let's see. Also, depending on the variety of seed that we're talking about, you might have a better germination rate starting them inside versus out, especially if you have animals and birds who like to help themselves to your seeds. So an example that I have, I was trying to direct sow sunflowers and it did not work out for me. I had a family of rabbits that came and visited daily and just like plowed through all of them. And I'm probably talking about at least 50 sunflowers that they just like chomped down. So now even for sunflowers, and I succession plant that, which means I'll start a batch, plant it, start a batch, plant it, because the sunflowers that I'm buying are kind of like a one cut and done. So as soon as they're done, I'll rip it out and plant a new one, or I'll plant new ones in between the ones that are growing, just to kind of keep that flower going the entire summer for bouquets. So sunflowers, I now start inside all summer long, or in the greenhouse all summer long versus putting it out there with the animals. And then last, it's fun. I think for me, it's such a joy to start seeds. I feel like Elizabeth agrees because all of our text messages lately are about the seeds that we're starting and the season's kicking off. So it's kind of an exciting way to get your hands a little dirty before the season outside really begins. So we're going to touch on supplies to get you started. And like I said, Elizabeth and I have fairly different processes for this. So we're going to cover both. I use trays. Elizabeth does soil blocking. And if you're not familiar with that, Elizabeth will kind of fill you in on that and the benefits with it. So supplies for seed starting in trays. I start using trays and inserts, and I'll show you, I have pictures on the next screen. The trays usually come as a 1080 is what they're called. And then the inserts come in a range, but the more common varieties are 72 cell or 50 cell. Trays can come in two forms, with or without drainage. I use both. So when I have stuff inside the house, obviously I do not want drainage holes in it. But as soon as I move all of these plants outside, I swap them to the trays with drainage so I could just hit them with the hose and then it drains out. And then humidity domes that I use as I'm starting seeds. And then as soon as I see growth, just kind of those first leaves pop up in the soil, all of the humidity domes come off. So here's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. The picture on the left is an insert. The tray in the middle is just the tray that contains it. And then the humidity dome is on the right. And those domes can come in different sizes. There's also domes that kind of have, like if it's super humid in your house, they have like these little vents that you twist the top and let moisture out. My house is pretty dry right now. So if anything, I'm trying to keep moisture in. So I don't use the ones with the vents. And then some places I've sourced these before, Greenhouse Megastore, these are online, Bootstrap Farmer, and locally, You can find this at Gail Petitti's. And I'll say this 1,000 times. Goldie already knows my love for Yoder's Produce down in Fredericksburg. So I'm actually driving down there tomorrow, Goldie, to buy a ton of dirt and extra stuff. So Elizabeth, do you want to touch on seed blocking?
Sure. So soil blocks are a little different in that the next slide has the picture of them, but it's a tool that you use to make blocks and you don't need trays or the inserts to go in the trays. So it comes in two sizes. The two typical sizes are 3/4 of an inch and 2 inches. I start hundreds of thousands of seeds in the 3/4 of an inch, but if you wanted to try it and do dahlia seeds, I would do the 2 inch. They're readily available on Amazon if you wanted to just grab it there. Next, you would need soil to make the blocks themselves. I use Pro Mix. I'm also trying out the Tilth soil, which is a local Cleveland company that composts residential and commercial food scraps into soil. So I'm going to give that a try. I can update you later if that actually works well or not. And then you need trays to make the blocks on, and you push them out of the soil. It'll make more sense when you see the pictures. But I use cafeteria trays from Amazon. I just grabbed them on Amazon, but you can buy them at the dollar store, any place like that. So I use the blocker, put it up onto the tray, and then I just put the seeds, plant the seeds in it, put vermiculite over the top, and then I reuse those giant things of Kirkland saran wrap I bought to wrap my dahlias. I lay that over the top, and that works as like the humidity dome that Jess mentioned for the trays, but you could also use a humidity dome. But if you have the saran wrap, it's a little easier to do it that way. And some of the benefits of doing the soil blocks is all these supplies last forever. So once you get the blocks, once you get the trays, every single year you can take them out and reuse them. You don't waste any of the plastic from like a tray insert. And the blocks, the roots grow out of the block and they get air pruned, which makes for a really healthy seedling. So if you wanted to do some dahlia seeds, you could have some really nice plants to plant out. And they're just fun.
And yeah, so there are, so as Elizabeth mentioned, this is probably more environmentally friendly than buying plastic trays like I have. I think when I first started, I was buying like the super cheap Jiffy trays that you could get at Home Depot. And since then, every year I kind of scale up and get the ones that are a little tougher. I think Bootstrap Farmer is probably the one place that I know of that has like good luck breaking those trays. Like they're pretty tough. And so those can last for a really long time. They also now have plastic trays that are plastic inserts that don't have bottoms. So it's literally just a hole straight through. And that is supposed to mimic something similar to what Elizabeth does with her soil blocking. I tried that last year with some dahlia seeds that I grew for Ron. I don't know that I liked it as much personally, but if you're interested in that, those kind of inserts exist as well.
Elizabeth, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
I actually don't understand what that soil blocking machine does. Can you describe it exactly what's taking place and what product?
Sure. If I had some up here, it'd be easier. But you just, so you hold it by the, Jess, can you put the slide up with the picture of it?
Which, yeah, it's just.
Of the soil block. It's slide 10.
Okay. Sorry, I got like 20
windows. Yeah, I gotcha. So you hold it by the handle, and then you take with your other hand, you press wet dirt into the blocker, like into the bottom, and you pack it in so that it's tight, and then you flip it over and like use the handle, which is, it just has like a pressing mechanism, and you press, and then they come out like a block like that. And then you can make as many as your tray can fit. I have my cafeteria trays fit 160 little blocks. So I start 160 little seedlings on one tray.
And there's definitely, I think, a little skill into making sure the soil is prepped correctly. So Elizabeth, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. I mean,
Just
there's
like
tons
how-
of videos on YouTube
Yeah.
that you can see the soil. So it also depends on what you have. Like when I use my Pro Mix, I like it to be really wet. Like I squeeze it and the water comes out of the dirt. But if you use like the tilth soil, it's already wet. So you don't want it to get it as wet. So it is kind of a trial and error, but the really easy thing is if they fall apart, just put it back in the dirt and try again. Like, just break up the blocks and try again. Check before you put seeds in them, but they're pretty easy. They're pretty easy to make once you get going, but there is a learning curve at the beginning, but there's so many it's a pretty popular way of starting seeds. And there's tons of YouTube videos, and there's also classes that you can take of soil blocking 101 that would be really helpful. And you could message me. And I can
load it upside down.
Yeah, like I do.
I have a question.
Some
please.
people just use the sides of the bin to press it down into it, but I load it with my hands. You can just press it into. There is a stand-up soil blocker that you can use to press the dirt into.
And then how do you decide which size soil blocker to use for which size cube? That based on the size of your seed?
The starter pack generally is a 3/4 of an inch and 2 inches. So yes, you would think for a dahlia seed, I'm not going to put that in the 3/4 of an inch soil block. It's way too small. We're going to be busting out of it right away. And I don't like to bump up my seeds very much. So if you look, that's a 2 inch. Well, no, that's probably a smaller one, but the 3/4 of an inch cube fits into the 2 inch cube. So if you started in the 3/4 of an inch cube and it's ready to be potted up, you can make 2 inch cubes and just stick it in the middle. Like the square is like the cube is perfect to fit inside. So any small seed I start, like I have feverfew, Amy, status, straw flower, all of those smaller seeds, I'll start in the little blocks. The only thing I use for big blocks would be a dahlia seed or sweet peas.
What about zinnias?
I use the small for the zinnias. But that's personal preference. Some people like the bigger ones, but I don't want that many big block. I start so many zinnias.
You
It
ever
would
use
need too many big blocks.
You ever use oasis blocks?
I've used those for like cuttings. Is that what you're talking about? Like the cubes for?
We use them for cuttings, but I was just wondering if you could use them for seeds or if they were good for seeds.
I just saw someone using them for seeds. I personally have never used them for seeds. I'm sure they would work fine.
Yeah, I think like environmentally, there's some concern about oasis in general right now. And I realize with all my plastic, I'm probably killing the world faster than Elizabeth is. But that's kind of why I've stayed away from oasis. There are wool blocks that you can buy as well for seeds. I can text Nick. I have some on the kitchen counter. I haven't tried them yet. I tried them for a dahlia cutting and they did not work. But supposedly you can use those wool blocks for seeds as well. So before the end of the night, I'll have Nick go grab those and I'll just show you what that looks like. And then the difference between how Elizabeth preps her soil, where she wants it really wet. For me and the trays, I want it just wet enough that it's holding together. But if I squeeze it, I don't want water coming out of it. So that's probably the biggest difference between the two of us on soil prep.
I got a question on the humidity dome.
Sure.
I know, you can grow stuff in terrariums and stuff like that where they're under humidity all the time. What's the reasoning behind once they pop their head up to take the humidity dome off?
Yeah, and we'll touch on this when we get to the troubleshooting. as well. But I think one of the biggest issues with seeds is dampening off. And I have a photo of that later. But
Okay, we can cover it later.
okay, cool. And then you can kind of see the picture with it. I also, if you're doing dahlia cuttings, I'll start them under a humidity dome, but once they root, I pop those out too. We can have a conversation about what other people do there.
Dahlia Society.
Oh,
No, I got it off. I got sound off too.
oh, somebody's chatting. You do not have your sound off, whoever.
Oops.
Mary Jane. That's right, I got you, Mary Jane. All right, so just general supplies for seed starting. This is what both, I think, Elizabeth and I have on hand. You're going to want a bowl or something to mix and prep your soil. Something that you could put water in and get that soil the way you need it. Lights, a table and or shelves, heat maps, plastic labels, markers, potting seed or potting soil or seed starting soil. Elizabeth and I both use ProMix. We're both like testing out that tilth soil this year. They have a seed starting mix. In the past, I've used like Espoma seed starting mix or Miracle Grow seed starting mix, but I've found like both Espoma and Miracle Grow aren't not filtering, but they're not getting all of like the large sticks and stuff out of their seed starting soil. So I've stopped using those. Vermiculite, we'll touch on that as well as why you might need it. And then the most important thing, at least in my opinion, since I put all this stuff in my dining room, are the fungus gnats, the sticky traps. So we'll kind of touch on those. So bowl or tray to mix soil, I have a tidy tray, but really anything that you can use to prep soil. So I have this, and then I have like a kitchen mixing bowl that I put dirt in, mix it up, and then I put it into this tidy tray, and my trays fit right inside of this. So I can just put the dirt in, smooth it off, and easy to clean up, especially since I do this all inside. Lights, and I want to thank Mark, who kind of gave me a tip last year that perhaps I didn't have the correct grow lights. So even though they were working, I have since switched to these grow lights, and they're also what I use in my plant cabinets for my indoor house plants. Elizabeth, do you know what kind you use? Is it the same kind?
No, I use LED shop lights from Home Depot.
Yeah. And some people are still using like halogen lights. All of that's okay. And Mark is probably the expert on what, Mark, what is it that the Kelvin that they need to watch for? I'm putting on
Well,
spot.
the 6500K is perfect. That's a very bright light. That's excellent for seedlings. It represents sunshine. You can go a little bit warmer than that. You can do 4000K, and but that is designed more for flowering plants. But if you're just growing vegetatively, the 6500K I think works great. It's a bright light. If you put African violets underneath it, you know, they may yellow a little bit on you. So you have to have the lights a little further away. But for growing seedlings, you can keep nice, thick, stocky seedlings under the 6500K.
Yeah, I think I'm sure my neighbors have questions every time, like come February, and my dining room is like the brightest lit house on the entire block for the next 4 months. So getting into this, let's touch on shelves. You can set this up on a table if you have a way to like rig it from the ceiling. That's what Tony does with his cuttings. I use the shelf on the left. And in particular, I like the ones that are 18 inches deep. You're going to pay a little more for those extra 6 inches, but those 10, 20 trays fit perfectly on them. And I can get 4 across each shelf. And I don't use all 6 shelves. I think I used 4 of the 6, and I just kind of space them out. For me, with the grow lights, I end up zip tying those grow lights through the metal shelving. And then if I need to raise the lights, I can just tighten up those zip ties as my seeds get a little bigger. By the end of the season, I have 4 of these racks that are like full with seeds. So as soon as I take stuff outside, I'm starting new stuff. And that goes probably through May. So Elizabeth and I were not kidding about the volume of seeds. Right now, I just have 2 racks, but after this weekend, I'll have all 4 going. If you want something that maybe you want to keep in your house, the 3-tier Sun Lake garden you could buy from Gardener's Supply. And that's kind of a more visually pleasant option for you if you're looking for like a more permanent fixture in your house. So you can do your seeds in the spring and move your house plants in during the rest of the year to give them a little extra light. Or if you grow succulents, this is a really good light shelving system for succulents if you're kind of into that. Heat maps or mats. Elizabeth, you use these too, right?
I only use them on 2 things. I know you use them more than I do.
So why don't you touch what you use them for?
I mean, I use heat mats on dahlias and like to wake up tubers and peppers. I guess 3 things, and lisianthus. And those are the only 3 things I use on heat mats. But I think you do a lot more.
I do. So currently I have sweet peas on heat mats. Celosia, I use heat mats. Basically anything, I'm sure they'll tell you not to do this, but basically any seed that I'm starting goes on a heat mat. And part of that, I think, is our house is from 1910 and it is freezing inside all the time. And it keeps the heat at like 63 at night, which I just feel like is cold. So I keep all these babies, at least they're warmer than I am most of the time in the house. So like I said, as soon as I see growth with the humidity domes, I usually will move them off the heat mat at that point too. Like once I know they have roots and they're getting established, then I move them up the shelves. So I keep all my heat mats on the bottom shelves. And then as things get established, I move them up. And then eventually they all move outside. Labels and markers, you are all familiar with these. I did include my 2 favorite types of markers. You can get both on Amazon, and I think I've seen the garden marker at Petit's before. If you haven't used this brand, I think it's a German brand. I don't want to say that incorrectly, but it is probably my go-to garden marker pen that does not fade. I noticed with this one in the sun, things faded a little bit. The other one seems to last a little longer for me. All right, and here's just the soil that Elizabeth and I use. The Pro Mix will come in different types, so make sure to do a little bit of research about what you are looking for. I use the BX and I get that from Yoder's, and I think it's like $32 for a massive thing of dirt. I go through probably 5 of those before the beginning of the season is over. And then Sprout is the kind that Elizabeth and I are trying from Tilth, the company in Cleveland. I have 3 bags of this that I'm trying this year. Elizabeth, how many did you pick up?
I bought 5 and they actually changed the bag now. It's a lot better. It's a plastic, more durable. So it's not that paper anymore. But, and they also, someone I work with, her husband is like one of the owners of Rust Belt Riders, and they got a new sifter. So they said this year's mix is really, really light and fluffy and should be great for starting seeds. So I don't know where you can get it locally, but you definitely can get it from their, like where they do the compost and stuff, but which is in Cleveland, if anybody's willing to drive.
They do deliver, but I will say their delivery fee is steep because I got compost from them one year. I bought it by the yard and it was, all of it was very expensive. But all right, my favorite subject are fungus gnats. I hate them, and no matter what I do, every single year I get them. The one thing that has helped, and Elizabeth and I briefly touched on this, but we both put vermiculite over the top of our seeds once we get it started. And that helps kind of keep the moisture in, but it also seems to help control the fungus gnats. Definitely better than when I was using it without. I like
it's gross, but the gnats lay their eggs on top of the soil. So the vermiculite, some people use sand too. That stops them from laying their eggs right on top. So that's why it works.
There you go. I love the little kind of traps on the left. Those I put directly into the soil. So a lot of times you'll see fungus gnats kind of skitter across the top of your trays or your soil blocks. And if that's at the same level, it kind of catches them a little easier. You can buy like big square sheets, which I also have, and I tie those to the metal racks. Last year I tried this catchy. I think I got an Instagram ad for it and I was like, why not? That did a fantastic job of catching things and cutting things down. And the last thing that I love is if you're into carnivorous plants, I have a few. I'll pop these on my shelves with my seeds, and then they can get a nutritious dinner and kind of help you manage your fungus gnat population. So we'll kind of touch on planting now that we've kind of talked about supplies. So Elizabeth, I was hoping you could kind of kick this section off.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
I don't plan the way you plan.
No,
I fly by the seat of my pants. So
fair enough.
I think you should talk about it.
All right. So I think the thing we both do is know your last frost date. And I'm sure all of us know that because we are anxious to get our tubers into the ground. For most of Northeast Ohio, that's roughly the first couple weeks of May. There are some pockets, I was trying to look at where members were, that's later in May. From there, you'll want to go back the recommended number of weeks to start the seed. And usually this information is found on the back of your seed pack. Otherwise, you can Google it, and Google will tell you everything. But I'm the opposite of Elizabeth. And if you don't know this about me, I'm really into spreadsheets and organizing stuff. So I have a spreadsheet of everything I need to do to plan. And Jerry, I hope this like warms your heart to see a spreadsheet being used for plants. But I have every variety of plant that I grow. I have the date I need to start it. So every Saturday and Sunday, that's when I start my seeds. I will start them during this date range. And a lot of times, if it's like the 5th through the 19th, I'll try to see what the weather's like. And if the weather is holding up, I might start something sooner and just take my chances that Ohio doesn't get crazy. And then I also note how many weeks before the last frost I need to start stuff. So just in case I get my date to start wrong, I know exactly like 4 to 6 weeks. And some of this I do cheat because Elizabeth makes me panic and then I start things before I have them planned. But usually that's how I do it. In addition to that, oops, sorry guys. I also am very visual. So in another tab of my spreadsheet, I want to see the stuff that I've ordered and what it looks like. And I thought I could share what my spreadsheet looks like. So this is my 2023 spreadsheet. The first tab are all my dahlias because that's the most important thing to me. But the second one are all of the different types of seeds that I plan to start this year. So for me, at this point, I've eased up a little bit and I just need to copy over my notes from last year for when to start and seed up. But I also put where I bought the seeds from. So if I have bad luck with germination, I may not go back to that source for next year. But this goes all the way down to Z for zinnias. And then here's my seed starting by week. And so anything.
So what are the starting days? We talked about starting dahlias from seed. What are the starting dates for that? And then what are the starting dates for putting the tubers if you're going to start them indoors?
Sure. So for dahlia seeds, that's about 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost date. And those, I don't personally recommend starting those sooner.
Line 30,
they
line 30, you've got details.
Oh, there you go. Dahlia seeds. So this is when I'm planning to start it this year, March 5th through the 19th, which is earlier than I recommend for you, but I have a greenhouse that I will move these seeds into. So if you don't have a greenhouse or a way to keep them warm, I would start them later. So you would probably want to start maybe the 1st of April. I'm also a rebel and I do not wait until the end of May to plant my tubers, which probably pains people on the call. But I try to pot up my tubers, all of them that I want to plant early. I pot them all up into their own pots to get a jump start on the season. Because I do cut flowers, I want to get blooms sooner than later, which results in roughly like 250 to 300 pots of tubers that I have inside the house until it warms up enough that I could put them outside, which Elizabeth is like, you're nuts. That being said, because I've started them in pots, by the time I move them outside, they already have a root system going. And I find I have less issues with tubers just not making it or rotting out. I did have 2 last year where the tubers started to rot and Tony was over and he's like, you should dig down and cut that tuber off if it's rotting. If it already has roots, it doesn't need that tuber. And sure enough, I dug it out, saw that the tuber was rotting, but the plant had roots, cut that tuber off, and that plant rebounded really nicely and produced great blooms all summer for me.
So when do you start your tubers indoors?
So I feel like Tony's gonna kill me. I've already started the ones that I want to take cuttings off of. Because for me, and I don't know if it's because my house is so cold, it can easily take, I don't know, a month to sometimes 2 months for my tubers to get woken up and get going. Tony, I don't know if Tony's still on, or Tony, when do you start yours?
I don't usually start my tubers in flats that I'm gonna plant out in my garden until mid-April, sometimes even a little later. If I'm gonna do cuttings though, I do start those more like middle of April, that kind of thing. If I'm gonna take cuttings, now I'll start some of the ones that are slow. Of course, it depends on the varieties of dahlias. You're absolutely right, Jess. Some of these tubers eye up very, very slowly by variety, and you have to start those like Jackie Evangelista. I start those on St. Patrick's Day because it takes me 2 months to get those going. But it's variety specific.
Yeah, and I think for me last year, I would need to double check, but I think my first bloom was a Valley Porcupine, and it was like the first or second week of June. So my season is way before many of you, because a lot of you are trying to hold off. So when the shows come, you have blooms for the show, where I'm kind of the opposite. I want to sell that. So the sooner I can get stock, the more that bouquets I could sell. So if you're not doing cut flowers, you might just want to like hold off and start when Tony kind of recommended. And so we've kind of touched on how to prep your trays. And here's I think a really good example, if you guys can see it. Here's the little soil blocks that Elizabeth starts hers in, and they're squares, and they literally fit right inside that larger soil block. So when you need to bump it up, you just literally put the square right into the other square. If you're using an insert like I am, you're probably buying 4-inch pots. If you need to bump them up, I try not to bump my stuff up. Like I'll let them sit in the tray until I can get them in the ground. So seed packets, here's an example of 2 companies. I buy a lot of seeds from Johnny's, which if you've bought seeds before, they have a really great selection. And I think their packets are the most detailed and helpful seed packets that you can buy. They'll tell you how to grow them, how to sow them, the use, the life cycle, the requirements, the temperature that you need to do it. If you're buying from another company, and I'll just say Florette because I also buy from Florette, she doesn't have near the wealth of information that Johnny's does on the back of her seed packets. The other one is Baker Creek heirloom seeds. If you're looking, especially if you're into veggies, they have lots of weird and wonderful vegetables that you can buy and grow. So if you're kind of looking for the next new veggie that you might want to try, Baker Creek might be right up your alley. And then final prep. So once you have everything planted in your trays, I don't know that you do this, Elizabeth, for soil blocks, but for trays, I'll mist the top of the soil, put my vermiculite down, and then that's when the humidity dome goes over it. Elizabeth, do you mist yours before you put saran wrap on?
No, because the blocks are wet.
Okay.
Like they have enough moisture in them. And then once you put the saran wrap on, they get really
Steamy.
a lot of moisture. So yeah.
All right, so let's touch on troubleshooting. And I didn't catch who asked the question about why to take the humidity domes off. But if you can see, on the seedling, right here at the bottom where it's getting close to the soil and it's getting like super weak and thin, that's kind of it's called dampening off. And if you can't control the moisture in the environment, that can happen. And I'll circle back on that. So let's start on some common issues. So Elizabeth, you want to talk about this one?
Oh, what is it? Seeds don't come up?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is you should get fresh seeds. You know, every single year, your germination rate goes down. So if you try something and it's not coming up, or you're getting like 1 out of 10, then you probably need fresh seed. Generally, I expect close to 90% of all of my seeds that I plant to come up. Like, I only plant 1 seed per block. I know Jess plants 2, but I only plant 1, and usually I don't have a lot of empty soil blocks. So I think that if you're having problems with them not coming up, it also could be your moisture, and that really does depend on the way you're starting them. If they're in a tray or if they're in a soil blocks, I water every 2 days. They dry out a little bit faster than a tray does. So I have to water them every 2 days. So if it's not coming up, I don't know. I feel like there's lots of things, but usually I would say it's that your seeds aren't fresh.
Yeah. The other thing too, like Elizabeth said, especially at the beginning, it needs to be moist enough for the seed to get started. So even a few hours of that soil being too dry can affect how that seed starts. So that's one thing I think, especially, the first week, I would say most of my seeds, besides Lysianthus, most of them will start to produce within that first week. So if I've noticed something isn't starting, like this year, I started violas, and 1 whole seed packet of viola, none of them started. And everything else that I started the same day, the rest of the violas did. So that was a case of like bad seeds. And I reached out to the company and they sent me something new. But that's one thing that you're going to want to watch for. The other thing too is on your seed packets that you purchase, they'll tell you like packaged for 2022 or packaged for 2023. So if you don't write it down, usually it's on your seed packet, and that'll give you an idea of when those seeds were collected and how much time you have.
Do either of you harvest your own seeds? Do you let plants go to seed and then harvest?
Yes, and that is why I have like 2,000 sweet pea seeds. So if anybody wants some sweet peas this year, let me know and I will be your supplier. And on top of collecting them, Bob, I also continue to purchase. So I wasn't sure how many sweet pea seeds I would be able to collect. And then I went and bought, 20 varieties. So I feel like I'm in seed
overload.
This can be our group where we share our secrets, but obviously I have a problem of purchasing plants and seeds. So another problem that often happens, I see this a lot on my zinnias. I've seen it on a few other things like celosia, but a lot of times when you, as things come up, the seed coat or the shell of the seeds sticks and kind of pinches the leaves. It'll happen on dahlia seeds too. And I find that usually the larger the seed, the more I see this happening, where celosia has teeny, teeny, tiny seeds, and those usually pop right off. This would be because you didn't plant them deep enough. And usually on your seed packet, it will tell you exactly how deep to plant it. Elizabeth, do you have guidance on how you do it if there's not?
When I notice that, I just take the seed coating off, just really delicately. I peel it off and I don't have any problems. I do that all the time. But generally I find that you just don't have enough humidity. Like you maybe took your domes off too fast and the coat didn't have enough humidity to push all the way out. So, I mean, I think Jess and I differ on this on our humidity domes, but I leave them on until 90% are germinated. So that does help get all the seed coats off. And then if it's stuck, you can gently just pull it off.
Yeah, maybe I misspoke. I take them off once I see like growth. I wouldn't say I wait for 90% of that tray, especially because I don't do one variety in a tray, which that's probably not a shining example for you guys, but with the amount of stuff, I want to make sure all my trays are filled so I don't have extra trays. So I may have Lysianthus with violas, which I do right now, and they have different growth rates. So for me, those violas were ready to go before the Lysianthus. So then I'm like covering up the Lysianthus with saran wrap to keep them kind of under a humidity dome while the rest of the tray is out. And if you're a little nervous about pulling that seed coat off, you can spray it with a mister, and then it's a little easier to get those shells of the seed off your plants. If you damage the leaves, those aren't their true leaves anyways. A lot of those first sets of leaves yellow and fall off anyways. So don't stress. You're not gonna like kill the plant if you rip one of those. So seedlings die suddenly, and this is kind of dampening off that we're talking about. If what appears to be a healthy seedling suddenly falls over and withers overnight, which happens to all of us, I think I'm at the point now where it may not happen to a whole tray, and I've definitely gotten better over the years, but it still can happen. You cannot fix it. There is no solution. Once it happens, they're toast. So it's due to either excess moisture or the nutrients that could be in the soil. They create the perfect environment for that. So kind of keeping your soil moist but not soaking wet, that will kind of help with this. Like I said, that fine vermiculite does wonders to kind of help absorb excess moisture. And then the other thing is if you're holding your seedlings over inside, at some point you're going to need to fertilize before you can get them out. So if you do, make sure you're using the appropriate fertilizer for that. I use fish fertilizer, which if you ask my husband, our house is the stinkiest house in late March and April because it has like that whiff of fish. But there are probably other ones you could buy that do not smell as bad. Another problem you can get are long spindly stems with tiny leaves. And we're all in Ohio and we know daylight is a problem here. And that's kind of why we all have artificial lights. So if you kind of see this, I know a lot of people who try to put seeds in their window and hope that gives them enough light. And the reality is here, I don't think it's enough light. So if you see them get super tall and weak, they need more light. And on like the Dahlia Facebook groups, I don't know, we'll see posts all the time about how somebody put it in the window and they were hoping for the best, and now their Dahlia seed is reaching for the light. So that's kind of what it's called when it gets too thin, too fast, and grows too fast. It's trying to reach for sunlight. Buy the proper lights. That's really the easiest fix for this. Droopy stems and leaves. So this circles back to overwatering. you can overwater your seedlings and it will actually drown them, depriving the roots of air. So that's one thing you need to keep an eye out for. A way to kind of watch for this is buy the appropriate soil. So you don't want soil that's going to hang on to too much moisture. You can use a mix containing peat moss. I know there's a lot of controversy about peat moss at the moment, or core, which is a coconut husk fiber. Some people make their own potting soil. Tony does. So if you're really into it, I'm sure you could find a ton of articles on how to make your own potting soil. All right, so to wrap things up, and I'll send out this slide deck. I'll have Sharon post the deck on the website so you guys can actually get the links. We've included some of our favorite resources. My personal favorite is Garden Answer. She's on YouTube and got me in the slippery slope of plants. She has a beautiful garden. So if you just want to watch videos on gardening, I usually start my morning with her latest episode of her YouTube channel. And then I've linked all of the links to the supplies that Elizabeth and I mentioned today. So if you're looking to purchase them, they're here. If you have questions, and we'll pause for more questions, but feel free to email Elizabeth and I, and we can kind of answer any questions that you have. So with that, any questions?
You are going to send us the deck?
Yeah, yep,
Fantastic. Then we can just hyperlink.
yeah.
Cool. I was reading an article the other day about the gnats, and they were saying that the gnats especially like soil that contains bark. And if you can read the ingredients and stay away from the ones that list bark up near the top of the list, you might be better off.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that. Trying to think if Promix, I don't know if Promix does or not. I don't know that I've ever seen bark in it. Elizabeth, have you?
No, I don't know. I would have to look closely.
So I can add my 2 cents on fungus gnats. Fungus gnats feed on the organic materials, but they can, the larva can then transfer to the very fine root tips. And generally they won't harm a plant that just has a normal fibrous root system. Where you really get into trouble is when you're trying to grow bulbs or tubers, like you're trying to start tuberous begonias in spring, because when the fungus gnats start nipping away at the fine roots, then it lets the fungus issues and you can lose your tubers. So I grow tuberous begonias. I grow about 80 of them a year in big 8-inch pots, and we can't afford to have fungus gnats. There's one product that works really well. I'm not sure if it's inside in the house product, but it's a naturally occurring fungus called Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis, and it's designed primarily for mosquito larvae, but it works and is labeled, it works exceptionally well for fungus gnats. And you literally drop 5 drops into a gallon of water. And if you water your plants with that, the fungus gnats in the larva form will die off due to natural fungal predators. So I'm not sure you can do that in your living room. You can read the bottle, but it works really well in a greenhouse. And then the other thing to keep in mind about fungus gnats, most times people buy their fungus gnat problems. They buy it and it comes in the soil. So if you're buying a soilless synthetic mix, like a Pro Mix, which is a mixture of peat moss and perlite, or some of those commercial mixes, you probably won't get fungus gnats. But if you're bringing in soil mixes that have natural composts in them, which are wonderful soil mixes, the odds are very good that you're bringing in fungus gnat larvae or eggs. And as soon as you water the soil and give it air and oxygen and light, up pop the fungus gnats.
Yeah, and I think, Mark, going off of what you said, the Pro Mix that I buy is the BX, which also has a fungicide.
It's a biostimulant and a mycorrhizal, both which are excellent for a soilless mix.
Yeah. Other,
All natural, all organic.
So are you propagating dahlias, seedlings? Are you cross-pollinating and doing the seeds?
me? Yeah, this will be my very first year. So I luckily had Tony and Ron kind of mentor me a little bit. Tony especially walked me through his top secret journal of how he has his parents and his secret code that only Tony knows, I think. But showed me how he hand pollinates and chooses specific parents. I did the Ron Minor method this year of letting the bees do the work for me. And because of the way I lay my garden out, all of my fully doubled are together. So I don't, no offense to anybody who likes the open centers, they're not my jam. I have a few, like I have Ron's varieties, but I can't really use them for cut flowers. They don't have a good face life. So a lot of mine are formal decks, balls, informal decks. That's the majority of the dahlias I grow. So I did collect seeds, and this will be my first year growing, and I'm hoping to plant a couple hundred seeds, and Elizabeth volunteered to host some of my babies in the hopes that we can get a few dahlias to hang on to. But if somebody wants dahlia seed, I probably will have extras, so let me know. Other questions? If not, we'll roll right into the new introductions for the ADS. And Elizabeth, I know you've got great tonight. So I just want to thank you for hopping on with me to kind of talk about seed starting. All right.
Great job, you guys. Really great.
So I'm sure we're both crazy, and thank you for letting us share our craziness with you. All right.
Good presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent.
So I have not personally watched this yet. I don't know if anyone else has already, but if you're new to the Dahlia Society of Ohio or the American Dahlia Society, every year hybridizers like Tony and Ron put their dahlias that they've started from seeds into trial gardens, and this is kind of a presentation of the results from those trial gardens. Did I explain that right, Ron? Yeah, okay.
Yes,
So,
you did.
thanks, guys. I'm going to go ahead and hit play.
Garden directors to the ADS image
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
library. Grandpa's gift. A, informal decorative, variegated, yellow and red. Originator, Nicholas Gitz. Winner of the Darrell W. Hart Medal. Allen's Diablo. B, semi-cactus red. Originator, Alan Manuel. Winner of the Darrell W. Hart Medal. Kimberly, B, laciniated purple. Originator, Don Kasanik. Winner of the Lynn B. Dudley Medal. Ruthly, BB, semi-cactus light blend orange and yellow. Originator, Iris Wallace. Winner of the Lynn B. Dudley Medal. Connie Dawawa, BB, Cactus Yellow. Originator, Connie Young Davis. Winner of the Darrell W. Hart Medal. Allen's Alley Cat. Miniature, formal decorative orange. Originator, Alan Manuel. Winner of the Darrell W. Hart Medal. Newacum Fun. Miniature, formal decorative, variegated, lavender and pink. Originator, Wayne Lobaugh. Winner of the Lynn B. Dudley Medal. Clearview Pataha. Stellar, bronze. Originator, Dick Partial. Winner of the Darrell W. Hart Medal. Holly Hill Letitia. Water Lily, purple. Originators, Ted and Margaret Kennedy. Winner of the Darrell W. Hart Medal. Kelsey Bramble. Miniature collarette, purple. Originator, Colin Walker. Winner of the Evie Gullickson Medal. Kelsey Niakani. Collarette, dark pink. Originator, Colin Walker. Winner of the Evie Gullickson Medal. AC Great White. AA Semi-Cactus White. Originator, Ken Greenway. Allen's Wild Rivers. A, informal decorative, dark pink. Originator, Alan Manuel. Carmela Stas. A, informal decorative, purple. Originator, Tony Evangelista. Max Arlo. A, semi-cactus, pink. Originator, Alan Cass. A.C. Edmonds. A, semi-cactus, dark red. Originator, Ken Greenway. Clearview Leroux. A, semi-cactus, purple. Originator, Richard Partial. Bloomquist Mallory. A, laciniated, dark blend, lavender and white. Originator, Paul Bloomquist. DGK. B, semi-cactus white. Originator, Don Kasanik. Vixen's Lolly. B, semi-cactus orange. Originator, A. Obina. J.S. Pinky. B, semi-cactus, light blend, pink and yellow. Originator, Jerry Schoenauer. Narrows Dawn Banks. B, semi-cactus, light blend, lavender and white. Originators, Ken and Marilyn Walton. Sam A.V. B, laciniated, red. Originator, Don Kasanik. Allen's Moondancer. BB, formal decorative, yellow. Originator, Alan Manuel. K.A.'s Grandma Sib. BB, formal decorative, dark pink. Originator, Christine Albrecht. Rivers Cherry Bomb. BB, formal decorative, red. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Clearview Netta. BB, formal decorative, lavender. Originator, Richard Partial. Bloomquist Wild. BB, informal decorative, light blend, bronze and yellow. Originator, Paul Bloomquist. Glencoe Lemon Drop. BB, semicactus, yellow. Originator, Art Chmura. Agape Joy, BB, semicactus, dark pink. Originators, Steve Lamb and Debbie Pavich. Windhaven Firecracker, BB, cactus, red. Originators, Bob and Judy Romano. Rivers Uncle Ted, BB, incurved cactus, red. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Gigi's Mellow Yellow, BB, laciniated yellow. Originator, Glenn Gitz. Connie Marion, miniature, formal decorative, white. Originator, Connie Young Davis. Alan Sunlight, miniature, formal decorative, yellow. Originator, Alan Manuel. Kelton's Original, miniature, formal decorative, yellow. Originator, Kelton's Barcha. Rivers Tangy Tart, miniature, formal decorative, orange. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Bloomquist Anew, miniature, formal decorative, red. Originator, Paul Bloomquist. Rivers Little Vicky, miniature, formal decorative, dark red. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Rivers Penelope, miniature, formal decorative, dark red. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Bloomquist Gordon, miniature, formal decorative, flame. Originator, Paul Bloomquist. Rivers Rosie, miniature, informal decorative, dark pink. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Holly Hill Ambiance, miniature, cactus, dark pink. Originators, Ted and Margaret Kennedy. Irish Gnome, micro formal decorative yellow. Originators, Steve and Sandy Bowley. AC Kate, miniature ball, variegated, yellow and red. Originator, Ken Greenway. Newacum Streaker, miniature ball, variegated, white and dark pink. Originator, Wayne Lobaugh. Skipley Reboot, stellar, dark red. Originator, Richard Williams. Clearview Naive, stellar, purple. Originator, Richard Partial. Rivers Lucille, stellar, light blend, orange and yellow. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Sandia Nocturne, water lily, purple. Originators, Steve and Sandy Bowley. Sandia Can, water lily, variegated, lavender and purple. Originators, Steve and Sandy Bowley. RNX Boom Boom Lemon, novelty fully double, yellow. Originator, Eugene Kenyon. Windy Hill Cherry Bloom, collarette, dark pink. Originator, Carolyn Cutt. Gigi's Surprise, collarette, red. Originator, Glenn Gitz. Rayanne's Red Rocket, Collarette, red. Originator, Wayne Lobaugh. GG Starburst, Orchid, flame. Originator, Glenn Gitz. SB's Buttercream, Orchid, white. Originators, Steve and Sandy Boley. Thanks to all who contributed photos for this presentation.
Okay. The one thing I noticed on here is,
The American Dahlia Society is a nonprofit organization.
okay. The one thing I did notice on there is some of the AC varieties said cowlets, and I don't think Teresa has them. But like AC Kate, if you're looking for that variety, I think Jess's Dahlia Garden has them, and I don't think her sale has happened yet. So if you're looking for some of those AC varieties, you might want to keep an eye out on that other site. So,
You know, for the new members, they should know that our Dahlia Society has a tuber sale and a plant sale. We don't have the new introductions, but we have a lot of really good tubers and plants to sell. I think last year we had a little bit of an overload. Mike was more successful than we planned on. And I don't know what we were ending up selling them for, but we had a lot of great names and good stock.
yeah, and I think we may have some interest. Tony, do you have any of your new intro?
Yeah, Carmela, I gave Mike a virus-free Carmela stock that was tested, so he should have cuttings of that. And we should have, I can be sure we have cuttings of last year's, the ones I introduced last year too.
And there's a chance we'll have Alan's Alley Cat because I picked that up. So if I can get Teresa to ship me it sooner than later, I'll try to get some cuttings of that one. And then we have that for the sale too. So speaking of tuber and plant sale, Tammy is going to take the charge of the tuber sale along with Sharon this year. So with that, Tammy, I don't know if you want to share anything with that. The other thing that we will be doing is kind of soliciting tubers. So if you have extra tubers that you would like to donate to the sale, Tammy will be your point person for that.
Well, I think we had discussed earlier about maybe setting up drop-off sites. So if we had any volunteers, east side, west side, and something central is probably what we're looking for to get this on the ball and get rolling. So maybe that's the first thing to address, if there's any volunteers that would be willing to be drop-off sites for people.
I'm located in Solon, so I can pick up some. I'm volunteering to help Mike propagate. So that would be.
Thank you.
And I might be more central, so I'm Cleveland Heights.
Okay.
So if anybody's Cleveland-ish, and I could probably pick up as long as it's after work.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody on the west side?
Yeah, I would be more than willing to take some tubers. And don't
Thank
forget,
you.
Tammy, also, we're going to have tubers from Tom that will end up for our sale.
Okay.
So there'll be
Thank
some
you.
of those. Yep.
So what's involved in taking them and as a distribution site?
This is the first year I've done it, so probably maybe Sharon would have a better insight on how that was handled last year. I don't know how it was handled. So I think maybe some people just volunteer to let people come and drop things off. But what you did last year, I don't know. Does anyone have any input on that?
And
It
I-
was kind of just catch as catch can last year because,
Of
we
the-
just had to get it together as fast as we could. But if you're like the drop off point, people would bring you tubers. And then you could help Tammy a lot if you'd kind of sort them and maybe do a preliminary count and make sure that they're labeled, and in little baggies or whatever makes sense. But the people bringing them to you should bring them that way. And maybe Tammy, we could put out a little note of
Yeah.
what we hope the donors do and then what we hope the drop off points would do. And then ultimately they're all going to go to Tammy and she gets to
Right.
count them all.
Yeah. So I think that's what we wanted, just to get some drop off sites so that it would be a little more convenient for members to get those tubers available for us. I think the other thing to discuss, and I emailed Sharon today, was maybe some dates. Sharon was asking to have all these tubers available by April 17th so that she's able to get those on the website for the online sale. And then if she needs them by April 17th, I'm going to need them a couple days before that. So we kind of want to come up with a deadline on that too.
So
And I don't really need the tubers. I just need the counts.
You need the count, but I'm gonna, if you need them, the count by the 17th,
You got to count them a week before.
I've got to count them probably, yeah, a week before. Or give me, at least 3 or 4 days to get those verified varieties and numbers so that Sharon can have them ready by the 17th. So that's sort of what we're kind of going for date wise, to get these tubers to the sites and ready for us to do the next step.
So let's try to have them to the sites by April 9th.
Okay, that sounds great.
People, Tammy, time to connect, to get everything to Tammy before the sale goes. And the tuber sale, if you want to add it to your calendars, is going to be April 21st, which is a Friday, and that'll run through Sunday. But just like all dahlia sales at the moment, varieties go quickly. So if there's something that you have your eye on, you might want to be ready to shop. And then we'll also hopefully have a list ahead of time. So as soon as Tammy finalizes that list, I'll send out an email so you have an idea of the varieties that will be in the sale.
And it's going to be members only, right?
Yes.
And maybe open it the last day if there's anything left over. But this year, I really think they're going to go fast.
Yeah, and I think if we have extras, or if somebody doesn't wake theirs up soon enough, we can also sell them at Petiti's, which is where pickup will be on the 29th.
Mhm.
So anything extra we could kind of sell there as well. And that is open to the public. So any other questions on the plant or tuber sale? Or Mike, do you have anything else on the plant sale? You're muted.
Okay, on the propagation project, I did do a quick inventory of stuff that's available out at Tom's, including the pot roots. And it looks as though we're pretty well set, I would say, at least with stock for double A's, A's, and B's. There's quite a bit of stock in those, and BBs. There's quite a bit of stock and variety in those sizes. So the only ones that
It's those there.
Oh, sorry.
It's done.
There you go. I muted Ron. You're good.
Okay. The only ones that we're going to look to maybe supplement a little bit might be the miniatures, some water lilies, collarettes, pom-poms, and orchids. But we've got pot roots for some of those lesser ones, the pom-poms, the orchids. So those should be pretty well good for production. But if you want a few more varieties, if people want to look at a couple of theirs and see if they've got some they might want to send out to the greenhouse, that would be fine. Plus, I got together with Anna and helped order some tubers for the tuber sale from that Allen manual. And I think there may be some in that list that I told Anna that we may pull a couple out of there to use for propagation, and then they would still be available, as plants later on for the sale. We're intended on starting the 1st of March. I'm going to talk to Ron within the next week or two, and we'll get some of the equipment and the trays and stuff out there and ready to go and get some of the soil. So we're shooting for the 1st of March, and Lord willing and Mother Nature helping, we'll be okay. So I will keep people posted though, if there are some needs that we have, because there's no guarantee that all of these are going to pop and produce. So, that's kind of part of the business, but I feel pretty good with certainly some of the pot roots that Tony gave us, and Rob's given us some, and we've got some from Tom.
Mike,
So-
I don't know, maybe you didn't, you're probably not aware, because Hanu just released the results of the Dahlia mosaic virus. And we actually did pretty well, since only 60% of ours tested positive. A lot of clubs had a lot more, 100%, but those aren't going to be able to probably be propagated this year, because we're not sure whether it's ingrained in the DNA and not really going to cause active disease. But he doesn't have a test now to discern that. So of all those pot roots, we're not going to have a whole lot that are negative for everything.
I mean, in
I'll
regards
get with
to the ones
though.
that you sent out, Tony?
Yeah, what happened was and Ron, do you want to talk to this instead of me? Are you still on?
Yeah, I can't add to what you've said, Tony. The consensus of the virus team was that the DMV positive samples don't need to be thrown out, because we just don't know enough about it yet, but that they ought not to be propagated as clean. So they have DMV. I guess, in my opinion, I would do cultivars that are particularly desirable, even if they do have the DMV, because we know so little about them. So I would do that cultivar by cultivar, and I'd be glad to, discuss that in maybe by separate email. I don't have the list in front of me. I could get it up, but let's hold off on differentiating between what ought to be set aside and what ought to be propagated.
The other thing too, I don't know if we've considered this, but I know AGDIA sells test. Like if they had one for DMV, maybe the club could purchase some of those tests to check too.
We don't have any foliage though, Jess, that's the problem.
Only
We
a
have pot
foliage
roots.
test.
Yeah, it's a foliage test. And they're pot roots, so we can't test them before we propagate them. Maybe after we propagated them, but that gets really expensive.
Well, my thought is with the pot roots that we have out there, we utilize them. We don't advertise that everything's clean and, virus free. And I think we've only really done that once, when we were real positive right after, some of the testing of the pot roots, and they came out to the greenhouse. But there's no guarantee that even if they did all check out, that at some point something might not happen. They're going to certainly be much closer to being virus free than what you're going to get from anybody else, I would believe. So to me, we just go ahead and use them. That's just my opinion.
Hey, Mike, one of the things the last 2 years was the greenhouse got very hot before we distributed the plants. Any thought about moving that date up a week?
I think, Bob, they've already set the date for that. So it's kind of the middle of May, I believe, is when the distribution will be. So we really are working against a little bit against time in regards to getting these ready, getting them started is going to be the biggest part of it. So, and that's just going to depend on the weather. So. And I don't know if there were going to be other sales somewhere else, but we'll produce what we can produce and have stuff available for whatever sales there will be.
Yeah, and Mike, we had talked about Mike sending me the list, and I can send it out to membership. And if you're interested in specific varieties, if you can indicate that, and then that could kind of dictate how many plants of each variety that Mike might be able to start.
Right, and I won't do that until I know the plants are propagating themselves, and I'll have a list of, yeah, these are producers and things of that nature. But I mean, I do have a list of everything that's out there. I could give that to you. But again, I think most of these in the larger sizes, I mean, I've got 20 different varieties of Bs, 15 different varieties of As, 10 different varieties of As, and BBs almost 20. So there's a good selection there. And we are, space is going to be a deal. But if there are some of the other ones, like I said, some of the specialty ones, like you had, Jess, I think an intro, I think I'll have an intro that I can use out there. So we may have, I think we'll certainly have enough for the sale. I would just like to make sure that there's a nice variety for people to choose from.
Bob, the pickup issue was Mother's Day is why it isn't a week earlier.
Mike, did you have a chance to look at the pot roots that are in those fabric bags that
Yes.
Tom was using? How do they
Right.
look?
When we dealt with them and put them away, they looked pretty good. That was pretty slick. I mean, all they did was basically pull that bag out of the ground and everything was self-contained in those material bags. Yeah. They were pretty slick. He didn't do a lot of them because he didn't have a lot of the bags. We just wanted to kind of experiment. So we'll see. Like I said, I was out there 2 weeks ago and misted them again, and they looked okay. They were in the garage. In fact, one of Tony's pod roots had already got a little sprout on it. So I was ready to take a cutting right when I was there. So hopefully they'll be good.
Do you think those bags would keep moles out?
They might. They're kind of a woven material.
Do they
but
look like they have a
also-
little plastic in them or something that would?
Yeah, and they do allow the roots to come through, which is kind of interesting. So I know Jerry had talked to me about it, and we're going to talk to Tom and see if we can maybe pursue that a little further the next time around.
Hey, Jess, are we going to assume we're not going to pursue Rockefeller or Holden this year, just in case they have their sales? We used to do it all the time. Didn't do
Yeah.
it last year.
I think we talked about it at the planning meeting that we were gonna skip those, even if they did.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, I wanted Nancy to kind of talk a little bit about membership. We have a lot of new members this year. So Nancy.
Hi, everyone. The membership renewal is going well. As of right now, we have 132 DSO members and 46 ADS members. The social media promotion is going very well because 55 brand new members from there, or households, I should say. And out of the renewals, we have 51 renewals that came through, and 27 were from last year's social media new members. So we did have some retention from them. So it's been very easy to renew this year when we have the PayPal on our website. You can go by credit card. And if you don't want to do that, you can download the membership application and send it to me. And if you're unsure if you've renewed, just send me an email. I can tell you either way. And We do have quite a few that have not renewed yet, like 115 names. And 88 of those were from the new people last year. So I don't know if we're not going to get those retentions on those new members or not. So time will tell. But it's still early. We don't, New Year doesn't start until April 30th and May 1st. So we got 2 months here to go yet.
Yeah, and I'm planning on sending an email out to anyone who hasn't renewed, just to kind of remind you. So I know some of us kind of wait, and technically, like Nancy said, you have until the end of March. So still some
Yeah, but for ADS, they would like you to do it a little bit sooner if you're planning on doing that, because they want to get you on the roster and plan for their bulletin going out. So that would be helpful for them. And also, if you want to be a judge, you should also encourage you to join ADS also. What was the question?
I just wondered, you said we had 132 ADS members or DSO members and
DSO, yeah.
and 46 ADS. Are the
Yes.
46 included in the 132, or did you separate those out so you add those up for our total membership?
No, they're separated out. So those 46 are part of the 132.
Okay, so we have 132 total at present.
Yeah.
46 of which are ADS. Yeah.
And
yes,
technically, I'm part of the problem because I did not purchase my ADS membership through the DSO. So our numbers are probably not accurate. I purchased through the ADS website.
yeah. And Sharon did that also because she was testing her system on that end. So, we had 2 missing that way.
At least. Because I think I urged Elizabeth to just register on the ADS website too.
Okay. Well, at least they're members, and we'll get them next year.
Nancy, have you talked to Elva to reconcile that? Do we need to check in with her to get a list of who she has on the ADS list?
Did you get the report I sent you yesterday for the newest batch?
I have the list of Cs, but I'm wondering if we've gotten a list from Elva of who she has active, which would capture people like Jessica and Sharon who went directly through ADS to grab their membership, so that you have them marked as ADS on our list.
No, I don't have that from her. I can do
when I reach out to her with this next batch, I'll ask her for that. So then we can compare the other direction too and try to make sure we have everybody listed.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because the way I have them on the roster is if they join ADS through us, because that we get the money part of our spreadsheet. But if the money went directly to them, that wouldn't be reflected on our spreadsheet here.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, and thankfully Ron and Tony are still on, but if you are interested in becoming a judge and new members, you might not be familiar with what that is. So my hope was Ron and Tony can kind of explain it to you. And then also they can kind of share the new online judging workshop that they've started. So Ron, you want to kind of speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Can do. We had our first conference call last night. It was a bit of an experiment, and I would do it differently next. We will be doing it a little differently next time. But I hope people who participated came away with a little better understanding of how to become a judge and the process that we're using. We have a really nice set of judging modules that the ADS developed that provide an opportunity to increase that learning curve of knowledge to become a judge. So I think it's a relatively quick way to get new members and new judges up to speed. And we're going to be having those meetings like we did last night every 2 weeks. Next one's March 2nd, and then the 16th, and then the 30th. And we're going to be covering those ADS modules, and Tony and I are, doing it together. Tony's kind of in the lead role next time, me the following time, and then back to Tony. And we're going to cover all of the basics of judging dahlias in those 4 weeks. So I hope I hope the current judges will find it to be useful, and I hope that the potential new judges and new members will find it to be very interesting and a faster learning curve. So, Sonia, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that covers it real good, Ron.
And if you're a new member and you're not sure what judging is, the DSO puts on a number of shows where people can participate, bring dahlias from their gardens, and compete against each other. So if you're familiar with like the AKC for dogs, like those kind of shows, it's similar just for dahlias. So I will say it can get very competitive. Tammy, I got my eye on you this year. She was,
but it's also a lot of fun, right, guys?
It is. So even if you've never shown, it's a great way to learn more about dahlias. And if you're interested in becoming a judge, Ron, is it too late for this year to become a candidate judge?
No, I need to follow up with Bob on the timing, but I'll have a list prepared for our meeting on March 2nd.
Okay, and then to become a candidate judge, what are the requirements just for
You need to be an ADS member, you need to have a judging manual, and you need to be interested in judging.
That's it, pretty low.
That's it. No pressure at all. So anybody that has any interest is welcome to join us and figure out what they want to do based on what they hear. So I think if you start to get involved, you'll enjoy it enough that you'll want to stay on. So it's a neat part of growing dahlias.
I promise you, you'll be a better grower if you become a judge. 100% of the time.
That's how you get all the secrets out of them.
Right. We bare our souls when we're judging.
Right.
Darn right.
I saw Tammy getting secrets out of Randy, I think last year, Chewy. She was trying to get their growing tips.
Didn't divulge. Chewy's pretty tight-lipped.
We're not.
And then with that, I thought for the last 15 minutes, we can open it up to Q&A. So if anybody has any questions or wants to talk about something that we haven't covered yet, now is your chance.
I wanted to ask Tammy if she needed a drop-off point down in Akron. I'm in Cuyahoga Falls, just north of that. Do you need that far south, or is the other one close enough that you don't need an extra?
If you're willing to volunteer, we can put you on the list. So
Sure.
yeah, I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay, for my next question, I have been growing dahlias, but like a bunch of single dahlias for several years. So when it came to judging or came to exhibition, I didn't have a very good bloom or blooms to bring to the show. And either was it Summit Mall, and then I brought a really bad one to Petiti. So my question is to the group, when you are going to show dahlias, how many plants should you be growing of a particular variety in order to get the most blooms? Do you want 3 plants, 5 plants, 8? So that you're gonna, somewhere in there, have the best bloom to bring on competition day.
Well, I'll start by saying that if you ask Steve Santos from out on the West Coast, he grows 400 Edna Cs, and that's the only dahlia he exhibits. And he competes in the single, the triple, the 5, and then in the baskets with it. So the answer is really all over the place. I think for a lot of the small growers, we just grow what we like, and we grow, 1 or 2 of each variety, and you just take what you have on show day. I don't think there's a magic formula. I mean, if you have one that you do particularly well, you may want to grow more of that. But I don't think there's any magic formula. It depends on how many you're growing. You do want to grow varieties though that can win. I mean, you want to grow. You're not going to win with cut flowers at our shows, in open competition. You're going to have to grow ones that are kind of on the list. If you look in your CHD, ones that win some blue ribbons. Okay. That would be the best advice I could give you.
I would say also, Lori, that in spite of your best efforts, they're all going to be beautiful on Wednesday. So I don't think there's any easy answer to that. I tend to grow of my own introductions 14. So I kind of can reliably have blooms of my own stuff to show at most shows, but I think two or 3 or 4 probably give you a significantly better chance than if you grow 1.
Yeah, like you could say that you can be all over the place, because I've grown 6 plants of one variety just for the show, and they weren't blooming at all. And then the next week, then they all were just going like crazy.
On to town.
So that can happen,
So of course, my son Max, who's 12, wants to know if he can come to the judging meetings.
Yes.
So
sure.
Okay.
I mean, it's 7 o'clock until maybe 9 o'clock. We're wrapped up by 8:45, I think.
Okay.
He'd be welcome. We're glad to have him in.
Okay. And I do have a lot of extra tubers. Nothing that I own is tested. So I don't know if you want any of those for the sale or not, like the Valley Rest bucket or.
Yeah, and last year we accepted tubers from members that were not tested as well.
Okay.
And I record those, so if I don't know what time he needs to go to bed for school. So like worst case, watch the last half, and I can send the recording from yesterday.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, some nights we go to bed earlier or we're knee deep in homework.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. It's
Hey,
good to
Lori.
see everyone, by the way.
You too, and I got your email. I will respond.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm always like, 10 feet behind.
And has raised beds, and she's looking for recommendations for drip or
Wanna say hi?
Hey Max, he's like, nope.
Yep, he hid. He's disappeared.
So I have raised beds and I run drip tape down all of them. So I was going to share my setup with Ann.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hey, Lori, if you have, let's say, 5 plants, and you may want to plant them at different times, spread them out. That might give you a chance of hitting the dates right. One of the problems there is once they get in the ground, they all kind of catch up to each other. But it's possible that I know one of our former members was able to pretty much, I mean, he really liked to do Jaga. He was able to produce Jaga almost on the button every year. But typically, I think if you have 4 or 5 plants, you may want to try to spread them out. Every, you know,
And
every.
pinch them at different times too when you top them. You know,
Yeah.
for the bigger ones, if you grow, 4 plants, you would maybe pinch them a week apart and try to stagger them like that.
All right, other questions anyone has? No? Okay, if not, our next meeting is going to be March 17th. The St. Patrick's Day. I expect everybody to be wearing green and maybe have a beverage if you're into that, a green beverage. Mountain Dew counts. So if you're not into the alcohol variety, you can snag a Mountain Dew. But with that, I think that's everything. So thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Jess.
I hope it was informative, and I'll send out a recording and the slide deck for you in an email.
Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
Wonderful
Thank you. This is a
job.
great